This episode of the Burnout Recovery Podcast is brought to you by MEGA, your medical indemnity partner. Whether you're starting out in your career or have decades of experience, MEGA helps you thrive with support that goes beyond insurance. Enjoy travel benefits like complimentary travel insurance and Qantas points on your membership, plus education, medical legal support, access to career coaching and wellbeing resources. Visit mega.com.au to learn more. Insurance issued by Medical Insurance Australia, which has not taken into account your objectives or situation. Before you make any decisions about our policies, please read our PDS and consider your needs. Call us for a copy or visit mega.com.au.
Welcome to the Burnout Recovery Podcast, a guiding resource dedicated to healthcare professionals on their journey to overcoming burnout. Spearheaded by Dr. Joe Braid, a certified professional coach and rehabilitation physician.
Hello and welcome back to the Burnout Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Braid, and you are listening to episode 155. If you're listening to this, chances are you are a healthcare professional, maybe who's been questioning your worth or wondering if you're good enough or feeling like maybe the system would be better off without you in it. Today, we're flipping that script entirely. Today, we're talking about your unique value, not just as a healthcare worker, but as you specifically. Because here's the truth that imposter syndrome doesn't want you to hear. The healthcare system doesn't just need healthcare workers, it needs you. Let's start with something I hear constantly from the healthcare professionals I work with. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. Everyone else seems so much more competent. I'm waiting for someone to figure out I don't belong here. Does that sound familiar? That is imposter syndrome talking, and it's particularly vicious in healthcare because the stakes feel so high. When someone's life is literally in your hands, that inner critic gets louder, doesn't it? But here's what imposter syndrome gets wrong. It assumes there is a perfect healthcare professional out there. Someone who never doubts, who never struggles, who never has to look something up. That person doesn't exist. And if they did, they'd probably be terrible at their job because they'd lack the humility and continuous learning that makes great healthcare professionals. The healthcare professionals who feel like imposters, they're often the ones who care the most, who are most committed to getting it right, who are constantly growing and improving. So your self-doubt isn't evidence that you don't belong. It's evidence that you take your responsibility seriously. Now let's talk about what makes you irreplaceable. Every healthcare professional brings what I call their unique professional DNA. And that's your combination of experiences, perspectives, skills, and qualities that no one else has. Maybe you're a nurse who grew up in a rural community and understands the unique challenges your patients face accessing care. Maybe you're a doctor who struggled with anxiety yourself and can spot it in patients when others miss it. Maybe you're a therapist whose own journey gives you an authenticity that helps patients feel truly seen. Your background, your struggles, your victories, your personality, they're not separate from your professional value. They are your professional value. I once worked with a trainee who was convinced she wasn't smart enough because she had to work harder than her colleagues to understand complex cases. What she didn't realize was that her thorough, methodical approach caught things others missed. Her, inverted commas, weakness was actually her superpower. Think about the patients who have specifically asked for you, who've said you make them feel heard or safe or understood. That wasn't an accident. That was your unique value showing up. Just last week, I was in clinic in Sydney and I had a patient who traveled 2 hours to come to clinic, and the patient and their spouse said, "Wow, you are one clinician who's actually really listened to our whole story rather than rushing us through or making assumptions along the way." So it definitely does happen, and I'm sure it happens for you too. And when we think about the healthcare system, it is not looking for carbon copies or cookie cutter healthcare workers. It's looking for the full spectrum of human experience and perspective, because that's what our patients bring. Your unique combination of traits, experiences, and skills fills a gap that no one else can fill exactly the same way. So let's talk about impact for a moment. When you're in the thick of burnout or imposter syndrome, it's easy to minimize your contribution. I'm just doing my job. Anyone could do what I do. I'm not saving lives like surgeons. But your impact goes far beyond the obvious. You're the nurse whose calm presence helps an anxious patient sleep. You're the therapist whose insight helps someone finally understand their patterns. Or maybe you're the technician whose attention to detail catches something crucial. And it's not just patients. You're mentoring newer staff even when you don't realize it. You're bringing a perspective to team meetings that shifts how problems are approached. You're the colleague others come to when they need someone who really listens. I want you to think about this. If you disappeared tomorrow, what would be lost? Not just your tasks. Anyone can be trained to do tasks. What would be lost is your way of seeing, your way of connecting, and your unique approach to problems. I was facilitating a Schwartz round last week with one of our newer facilitators. It was our second time of working together, and we've had this really lovely, probably informal mentoring relationship in growing my colleagues' confidence and certainty in being a co-facilitator in the Schwartz rounds. And to hear her story of why she wanted to become a facilitator as well is so empowering, and that's part of what I'm sharing at my upcoming keynote at the Australian Doctors' Health Conference. And we all know that the healthcare system is struggling, and it's not because there aren't enough people who can perform medical procedures. It's because there aren't enough people who can bring humanity, empathy, and authentic connection to healthcare. And that's what you bring, and that's what makes you irreplaceable. So, how do we move from knowing this intellectually to actually believing it? How do we combat that imposter syndrome voice that says we're not enough? First of all, I suggest you start collecting evidence. Keep a value journal, just a simple note on your phone where you jot down moments when you made a difference. The patient who thanked you, the colleague who asked for your opinion, the time you caught something important. These aren't bragging rights, they're data points that counter the imposter syndrome narrative. Secondly, reframe your struggles as strengths. That time you had to research a condition you weren't familiar with, that's not evidence you're incompetent, that's evidence you're committed to providing the best care. The fact that you worry about your patients, that's not weakness, that's the compassion that makes you effective. And third, remember that competence isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing how to find answers, how to ask for help, and how to keep learning. The most dangerous healthcare professionals aren't the ones who occasionally feel uncertain. They're the ones who never do. Finally, consider this. Every expert was once a beginner. Every seasoned professional once felt exactly like you do now. The difference isn't that they were naturally more qualified. It's that they kept showing up despite the doubt. So here's what I want you to remember as we wrap up this week's podcast episode. The healthcare system doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be you, with all your unique experiences, perspectives, and ways of connecting with people. Your value isn't just in what you do. It's in how you do it and why you do it and who you are while you're doing it. The patient who feels heard by you might not feel heard by someone else. And the colleague who trusts your judgment might not trust someone else's in the same way. You are not interchangeable and you are not replaceable. You're not an imposter. You are exactly who the healthcare system needs right where you are right now. The next time that imposter syndrome voice starts up, I want you to ask yourself, what would my patients lose if I weren't here? Not just the medical care, the human connection, the understanding, and the unique way you see and solve problems. And that's your value, and that's why the healthcare system needs you specifically. Thank you for listening to episode 155 of the Burnout Recovery Podcast. If today's message resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Share this episode with a colleague who might need to hear it too. Remember, you belong here, you matter, and the healthcare system is better because you're in it. Until next time, take care of yourselves so you can take care of others. Ready to take the next step in your burnout recovery journey? Visit drjoebraid.com for free resources, all 150 plus podcast episodes, and information about my keynote speaking. Links are in the show notes. Your well-being matters. Protect the asset that is you. Be your best you. Rely on MEGA for your protection and support, serving doctors for over 125 years through insurance, education, medical legal advice, and member benefits designed to help you thrive and succeed. Insurance issued by Medical Insurance Australia, which has not taken into account your objectives or situation. Before you make any decisions about our policies, please read our PDS and consider your needs. Call us for a copy or visit mega.com.au.